everybody. It's September the 5th, 2025, coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma. It is episode number 65 of Into the Fire. And what a show we've got for you all tonight. What an epic show we've got. We've got a whole house full of guests. And, of course, we were going to have a little technical difficulty here and there. But nevertheless, I think we're about 75% good. And well, actually even more than that, probably 90% good. We won't be able to see Dennis, but Dennis doesn't mind, and we'll be able to hear him, and he'll be able to talk to us. We've got some epic guests here tonight, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm just glad to be here. I think this is going to be an exciting episode. We're going to be able to talk a little bit about Mike Elam and the case, and about Buford Pusser, and really the murder of Pauline Pusser. And what a story this has been. And we've had Mike on a couple of other episodes. We've had Mike and Danny Cupples on to talk about this particular case. And this time, not only are we going to talk about the news in this case that happened and was announced last Friday, but we're also going to have Dennis Hathcock, who actually is an eyewitness to a lot of this story. And, some of his family were kind of made into villains in the movie Walking Tall, and it doesn't appear to be the whole truth. And so we will talk more about that along with other things. Hopefully everybody's had a good week. I know I'm really excited about being here, like I said, and I've been waiting to do this for since the announcement, and I've been really excited about it. So nevertheless, just get right to it. I'm not going to even read bios. Everybody knows Danny Cupples, and Danny Cupples is an individual that has been on here, and he's filled in several times. Hi, Kathleen. Hello, Steph. I see Kathy. I see a lot of other people that I recognize in here. Thank you for being here. I will remind everybody that if you have not, I get to see the analytics behind the scenes, and I notice that about 90% of my viewers are first-time viewers, and they haven't subscribed. And I would appreciate it if you just hit subscribe. It takes you about 30 seconds to do it. And the more people that like and subscribe this page, believe it or not, I haven't made a single red cent on this. So it's not about the money for me. It's about bringing you some epic guests. And the more viewers that I get on here, the better it is. And then they get more of a viewership out there, and they're more interested in coming on. So that's all I ask, is just please consider that. Also, if you're interested in getting some merch, Phyllis has gotten a few things. She sent me some pictures of the stuff that she's gotten, and I know others have as well. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It goes to a good cause, and I appreciate it. And you can go to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting website, and you can check out what is available for Jason White, and you can go under that, and you can see what show products are available for this, from mouse pads to coffee cups to, sweatshirts, hats, things like that. And they're, for the most part, I really like everything that's there. And some of the glasses are really, forgive my language, but badass. And I need to get those shipped to my house right away because they're really cool. And thank you, Phyllis. I'm glad you're loving the cups. And we love that you love the cups. And they look like good quality things. So good. So let's get everybody on here. Everybody, come on. Amanda, throw them on, and let's just bring them onto the screen. We got Danny Cupples, Mike Elam, and Dennis Hathcock are joining us. Thanks for being here, guys. I really do appreciate you very much.
Glad to be on.
Glad to be here.
Good to be here. I will give a little bit of an intro for Dennis, because Dennis, he hasn't been on the show tonight, and he's somebody that I'm really excited about having on here. And he's got an interesting life in and of itself. He's one of those guys that for his lifetime, he's basically been driving those coaches that drive around famous country stars all over the country. From I think Danny told me Winona Judds is one of them. Little Big Town, Eric Church, George Jones, and he's been with some of these country artists for years. And that's pretty neat. So I'm a huge music fan. That's real cool. So thanks for being here, Dennis. I think your story is amazing as well. And in large part, you're kind of a hero for stepping up in all these years and telling the truth. So Amanda, throw on that news story if you can. We don't get any sound on it, so we'll get to that in a quick second. So here's the deal. Last Friday, I have to give kudos to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and the Tennessee Attorney General for coming on. They made an announcement that they had reviewed, they did an exhaustive examination of the evidence in reference to the Pauline Pusser murder that happened August the 12th, 1967. And in doing so, during their examination, they found in their conclusion that if Buford Pusser was alive today, that they would file charges for murder in reference to, well, they would basically try to get an indictment, secure an indictment. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they would have filed it. I think they do it a little different there in Tennessee. And so basically, most of everything that they were talking about in that press conference, this is stuff Mike's been talking about for the last few years. And so, but I want to give them a big shout out because I was incredibly impressed with their press conference. I thought that it was very well done. I thought that they were very forthcoming with a lot of the information. And to tell you the truth, I got to give props to Mike Elam, because I think without Mike Elam jumping on this case when he did, that announcement would have never been made. There's just no doubt about it. And he's modest, and he's going to say that it's not about him, etc. But I think that everybody in this room would agree that Mike Elam's efforts in this particular case, not to mention his book right there behind me, I want you to look at after we're done here, basically has opened a lot of eyes in this particular case. And I think that really it put some pressure on. So let's start off with, hey, Mike, you go to this press conference. Tell us what you had expected before you got there. And did you have any idea that they were going to say what they said?
I really had a good idea. Of course, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation doesn't share information with anyone. I contributed a lot of information to them, and I felt like it was indeed a major step into getting this back on track. But I was expecting them to do just about exactly what they did. So I wasn't at all surprised when 25th Judicial District Attorney General Mark Davidson got up there and said everything he did. It was golden.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I'm a little bit surprised about on the entire press conference, honestly, was that they didn't make mention of you by name, because really I think everybody that was in that room, they knew where this is coming from. I mean, basically, you started on this journey. Tell us about how you started on this journey anyway, just to remind the audience about you were kind of dealing with the COVID time, and you were really interested in just looking into this particular case.
Yeah, this is a story that I've been interested in for a couple of decades, a little bit better. As a matter of fact, I met Dennis in 2005 over there after we'd had several lengthy telephone conversations about all this. But I got interested in it. It was kind of an interest, and it became a hobby. Then it became a cold case, and it became a mission trying to determine who actually killed Pauline and the backstory behind it. So I had gathered all this information. I have a Facebook page that I use as a fishing hole, and I would discuss all these things, and I was a little surprised by how many people come out and started telling me bits and pieces of the story that they knew. And it was like a big game of connect the dots. Nobody knows the entire story, I don't believe. But after about 6 years, I had an individual that he'd been listening to me for about 6 years. And he gave me a call one time and said, I believe I may have the gun that was used to kill Pauline. And I thought, I've heard that story at least a dozen times, but I always ask because you never know when you're going to stumble into something big. And sure enough, his story just checked a lot of boxes. So we talked him into calling the TBI, or allowing me to call the TBI, informed them of the gun. They came out, picked it up, and that's when the investigation got started. However, I did write my book back in self-published and got it out there in 2020. So a lot of the story's been told and has been out there for 5 years. It just took finding the gun to get the TBI interested in reopening everything or taking another look at it. It was never a closed case. But I had to have cancer surgery in 2020. Found out in late 2019 that I had cancer. Went through radiation, chemo, had the surgery in January, and of course, COVID came around in February of 2020. And doctors basically told me, you can't get around anyone because if you get COVID, you're gone. So I'm sitting here at the house, nothing to do. And all my people on Facebook started encouraging me to write the book, which I did. And so after that, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation contacted me after they picked up the gun, asked if I had any other information that I could share. And I said, well, sure. How much do you want? And things got rolling.
Yeah. This individual, and you're not going to name him, and I'm sure that he's going to be redacted from any reports, I would assume. But this individual that contacted, if not, if his name's out there.
Actually, his name, there's not going to be any names redacted. They're all going to be out there. And this is only the second time that they've ever done this, where they just open up the file to everyone. The only thing that they are redacting is any personal information that could be used in identity theft about anybody that's, out there that has contributed information that's still with us. So that's going to be
that's saying something. I mean, that's being very transparent, and I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if some of this stuff, has all of this stuff already ended up out there already, or are they still working on
right now. Right now, it's at UT Martin, and they're in the process of digitizing it all, and they're going to put it out in both hard copy, but people in just a very short time, I don't know exactly how long, but it won't be long at all before you can get a digitized copy of the files and read all 1,000 plus pages and to your heart's content. I think what I find interesting is, people will have no idea how much I went through to get to all this. So there's an interesting backstory that I have in that light, just everything I had to deal with to get the information that I got and turned over. So
yeah, and what he's and I know you're going to get and you're going to get to some of that too, because it's not all good either. The one thing that I'm interested in with respect to specifically the gun, what was his version of how he ended up with the gun, and was he told anything about it?
His dad and Buford knew each other, and therefore the morning of the ambush, before that they took Buford to Memphis, he got a hold of this individual and asked him to go to Sibley's Chevrolet, where the car had been towed to, and it was placed inside the shop to protect it. This individual managed to, and I don't want to tell all the story here because,
just tell what you're comfortable with. Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, this individual went and got all the guns out of the trunk of Buford's car. And for some reason, he decided to keep this particular gun. And years later, he passed it along to his son. And as the son heard the story, he began to get more and more suspicious about the gun, wondering why his dad had kept this particular gun of all of them that were in Buford's car. And it matched the information that I'd put out there about it being a M1 carbine. When I went over as soon as he contacted me, I got in the car, drove over there. It's 465 miles for me to get over there, but I got over there, shot the gun, took photographs of it. I have another friend that I won't say who he is that managed to run the serial number for me so we could find out, all the background on it, that it had been stolen from the Air Force of all places. And the individual who did that was O'Neill Moffitt, the son of the chief deputy of McNairy County. And he was told that, for instance, story is there that the Air Force was phasing out M1 carbines and going to the M14. And O'Neill and a few others that were on this detail were just told the guns were to be disposed of. And so O'Neill decided he'd help them out and took a few of them and took them back home to McNairy County and were selling them. And Buford ended up with more than one, we'll say that. And then O'Neill realized he was in trouble when the Air Force started to inventory all the guns that were supposed to have been turned in. And Buford helped him get out of that mess to a great degree. He still had to go to federal court, all this, but nothing serious happened to him. And O'Neill actually turned out to be a criminal investigator for the sheriff's office in McNairy County a few years later. So it all turned out good for him. But the gun, you follow the chain of possession, it does go back to Buford.
And I think this is a good part for Dennis to jump in, because I want to take Dennis back to the night before this happened. And I've heard you talk about this, and I think this is a good time. You were 16 years old at the time, and you were with a friend. I think was it Johnny Morrison is the name?
Harrison.
Oh, Harrison. Okay. Yeah. Tell us about the night before when you were kind of watching him and tailing the good sheriff.
Well, I get asked a lot about why was we doing it. Well, live in a little bitty town. There wasn't much to do. So that became kind of like a hobby, was to watch Buford Pusser and see who he was taking out that night and who he was meeting and what woman he was going out with and all that. So he had a place that was at Eastview that he would meet a lot of the women that he would leave with. And so that particular night, we were sitting there watching it was a big pile of, I don't know if you know what chirp is and gravel, but it's like gravel. And my grandfather worked for the state of Tennessee for the Department of Transportation, and I knew there was a little building there. I'd hide my motorcycle behind it and climb up on top of this, and I'd watch him and see who he was meeting. And well, that particular night, he met this girl that he met probably more than any of them. And so me and Johnny was sitting up there, and they had a little deal they'd go through. She'd pull in and he'd drive around. It was a little park, a little state park, little small state park. It had some picnic tables. And anyway, he would drive around, she'd drive around. They'd try to make sure nobody wasn't around. Then they'd meet. And sometimes he'd get in the car with her and she'd get in the car with him. But it didn't happen that night. She pulled in and he pulled up. And immediately he told her, "Get the hell out of here. I mean, get out of here right now. I don't want to see you. Get out of here right now." Well, I mean, it was about 12 o'clock, midnight, or probably after that. And of course, there wasn't any, you could hear every word that was said. So she took off in her car, and when she went to leave, there was another car that was coming across the highway from right down toward Raymer. That's a little old town that's down there close. Anyway, they almost hit head on. I mean, just a miracle they didn't hit head on. Well, she turns and goes back towards Selmer, and that car comes on into that little old park. Pusser pulls down beside it, backs up beside it. That car, they open the trunk on the two cars. They take the weapons out of one car and put them over another in the trunks. Then they slammed the trunks. They didn't say anything hardly to each other. Pusser got in the car. He left. The other car left. It took off back across the highway there down the road that goes to Raymer. He turns and heads back towards Selma. I told Johnny, I said, he's going back up there to, well, in the book it says Lady A. I don't want to say her name. She's still alive and around, so I don't want to say her name, but and a nice person. But, we were all young at one time. But anyway, so we get on the motorcycle and take off and head up that way. Well, sure enough, when we got up there sat his car in front of not her house. She lived with her parents. But across the little street they lived on was two more houses that belonged to her dad that were rent houses. Well, the girl that went with Petey Plunk lived in one of them. So that's where she had gone over there to that house when she got there. Well, I didn't know at the time, but I have found out. She was in the car, laying down in the seat, and that's what Buford had got mad about. It's because she was in the car, and I just recently found that out. I didn't know that at the time. So anyway, he was outside beating on the door, saying, "Let me in, let me in, let me in." And, me and Johnny had gone to a place that was not very far from the house, and you could see everything that was going on there and hear every word that was said. So anyway, and here's the kicker to the whole thing. He was on the side of the house beating and beating and saying, "Let me in, let me in. Tomorrow you'll be putting flowers on my grave." And hell, we listened to it. We didn't know what he was talking about. Nobody else knew what he was talking. He kept saying that, "Let me in." Well, finally, they let him in. He stayed in there probably, 20 or 30 minutes and came back out. And when he came back out, he had a hold of this girl that he was supposed to have been meeting down there, her arm, dragging her across the little old street over there, and she was trying to twist away from him and get away from him. And like, as she told me one time, if he had been his normal self, there's no way she could have twisted away from him. But he was high on something. She said she didn't know. He drank vodka and chased it with 7-Ups. That was his drink. And anyway, I don't know if he's drunk or up on pills or what, but anyway, she twisted away from him and started running toward her house and ran and got in the house, and in the process ran into a clothesline and literally, like to cut her head, it cut a big gash in her throat there where she hit the clothesline. But anyway, she got in the house. Well, he about halfway followed her, and then he turned around before he actually got to her house, and he went back to his car and got in it and started racing the engine and pulled out on the street there and was squalling tires and doing all that crazy mess. And then he came back, went up the street, turned around, came back down. I bet he was running 80 mile an hour on that little bitty narrow street. So I told Johnny, I said, come on, let's go. And so we was on the motorcycles and we left, and there's a hill there, and we could see what he had done. He had gone and turned into, it's a gas station that was right in the middle of town that stayed open all night. It was a Phillips 66 gas station, and that's where he usually bought gas. And he turned in there, and we let the motorcycle run and cut the engine off so he couldn't hear it, and rolled up there pretty close. He got out of the car, went into the gas station there, and the restrooms was right up front. He went in the restroom, stayed in there a minute or two, came back out, picked up the phone that was between the men's and women's restroom was a telephone there. He picked it up and made a phone call. I have no idea who he called or whatever, but he made a phone call. When he did that, he walked back out to the car, and the guy that was putting gas in his car, his name was Shorty McDaniels, and he told him to hurry up and get through, and he jerked the thing out of the spout there, and boy, Pusser jumped in the car and took off wide open sideways and all that, and headed toward Adamsville. Well, at that time, it was about, I'm just guessing, I didn't look at my watch or anything, but I'm saying it was 2:30, between 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, I just thought, well, he's going back to Adamsville. And shoot, at that time of the morning, I needed to be back at home and be in bed, and so did Johnny. So we just took off. Johnny had left his car at my house. He got in his car and went home. I went in, went to bed. My grandfather that I was living with then, I stayed with them part of the time. He come in there and woke me up. He got up about 5 o'clock in the morning because he had to be at work at 6, and he was normally up by 5 o'clock. He come in there and told me, he said, Dennis said, wake up. That crazy Johnny's in here on the phone. And I said, what does he want? I just left him. And I got up, went in there, and finally got on the phone. I said, what is it, Johnny? He said, somebody's ambushed Buford, and they killed Pauline, and they don't think he's going to live, and they're taking him on his way to Memphis. I said, oh, bull crap. There's no way. It hadn't been an hour and a half or 2 hours since we saw him. He said, I'm telling you, that's happened. I said, well, how did you know that, Johnny? And he said, one of the deputies came by and woke his dad up, beating on the door, and told his dad that it had happened. And the reason for that was his dad name was John Harrison. Him and Buford was partners in a vending machine business, vending and cigarette machines. Well, how it worked, because I'd heard John tell about it, Pusser would tell the people that run the nightclubs and beer joints in McNairy County whose vending machines to use. And then John would split some of the profit and give it back to Pusser. I thought, I don't believe that. And Johnny kept on, I'm telling you, and I can't remember. I can't remember who the deputy was that he told came by the house. I think it was Jim Moffitt, but I wouldn't swear that's the truth. But anyway, I said, well, I'll tell you what. Where did it happen? He told me it happened over there on New Hope Road. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to ride over there to New Hope Road and just see what I see over there. And at this time it was probably, I don't know, probably maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock, between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. Anyway, so I get on the motorcycle and I take a field road that was across from my granddaddy's house that went right straight over to New Hope Road. But when I got to New Hope Road, I didn't know whether to turn left or right, and I just accidentally turned right. And I didn't go a quarter of a mile till I went over a little hill, and there sat R.C. Matlock, who was a deputy, and he had the car sitting long ways across that little bridge. And I think you had a picture. Yeah. No, that had a picture of me and Johnny. They're right there. That little old bridge that's there. And that's where he had the car sitting. I rode down there and I said, wasn't nobody there except RC, and he had that car sitting. I said, what are you doing down there? And he said, oh, hell, somebody tried to ambush Buford and said they killed Pauline, and they got him on the way to the Med in Memphis, and they don't think he's going to live. I said, I don't believe that, RC. He said, I said, how do you know that? Why, there wasn't nothing there at that bridge. There was nothing there, literally, but a little pile of glass about like you put in your hand and throw in the middle of the road. So he said, little Hathcock, you better get your ass out of here. You don't need to be here. I said, okay. And so I took off. And I went on down the road, down toward the state line, and I knew a way. I wasn't supposed to be out on the highway with my motorcycle, and I was going to go a different way. Anyway, I went down through there, and I went about 2 miles. And there in the road was all kinds of glass. And I started stopping, and I was sitting there, and there was a bunch of holes, rifle holes that was in the road at about I guess about a 4 o'clock angle down through there. Well, I kicked the kickstand down and went to get off the motorcycle. And when I did, there was a ditch, a little old, probably not even a foot deep ditch on the side of the road. And I just happened to, when I got off the motorcycle, look over there. And later on, I found out for sure what it was, but I'd even thought it was a piece of Pauline's skull that was about maybe the size of your hand cupped. And that blonde hair of hers was still attached to it. And you could see, blood, that blonde hair was stuck together with blood and I guess brain matter. It was something like, I guess that's what it was. It was splattered all around. And I sit there and looked at it for a pretty good time. I thought, hell, I guess something did happen. I thought it was all something Pusser had made up and told, because I knew how big a liar he was. And so I said, I thought, well, I guess it is. So anyway, I walked over there to those holes that was in the road, and I was looking at them. And I started to pick up one of them. And then I thought, well, if this is a murder scene, if this has happened, I better get my ass out of here. And I'm going to go up there and tell RC what's happened, that he's at the wrong place. So I get on the motorcycle and go back up there. And when I pulled up, RC, I thought I told you to get out of here. And I mean, Dennis, they're fixing to be here at any time. I said, who? He said, all kinds of police, law, they're fixing to be here. They're on their way here. And I said, well, it didn't happen here. It happened on down the road here about 2 miles. And he said, well, I don't know what you're talking about, but said, Buford told Petey Plunk that it happened right here. And I said, well, it didn't. And about the time I said that, he said, well, you better get out of here. And I mean it. And I went to pull off. And then over that little hill here they come, highway patrolmen. I bet there's 20, 25 cars in line coming over. And they went to pulling over on the side of the road. I just pulled my motorcycle over there right at that little old bridge. I mean, I wasn't probably 20 feet from it. And I just sat on my motorcycle and let them all get out of their cars and come down there. So I just sit there, and nobody told me to leave. There in a little while, Johnny, he came down there, and he walked down there to me, and we sat there on the motorcycle and was sitting there talking. And I think about it a lot now. At the time, it didn't really dawn on me, but Petey Plunk come walking up down there, and he started in telling them that there was a sniper's nest he had found down there. And he got over there walking around, and what it was grass that was up about knee high, maybe a little higher than that. And he was just stomping around and everything. And I told Johnny, I said, I said, if that is a crime scene there, he is sitting over there, he's destroying evidence might be over there. I said, this is a most ignorant bunch of, well, I won't go into what all I was thinking. And I was telling Johnny. Well, we sit there, and in a little while, I saw Warren Jones, who was with the TBI. I saw him coming down through there, and I knew him. Not well, but I knew who he was. But when he came by, I said, Mr. Jones. He looked up, he said, yeah. I said, this isn't where it happened. And he said, what do you mean? He walked over there kind of toward me and Johnny, and I said, this is not where this happened. I said, if you go down here about 2 miles, just before you get to that old St. Rest cemetery, it's a black cemetery, is what I said. Before you get to that black cemetery of St. Rest, just before you get there, you'll see all kinds of glass. And I said, there's going to be holes, rifle holes, and everything. And I said, and I don't know what it is over there in the ditch, but it looks like the top of maybe Pauline's head, and there's still blonde hair attached to it. And I don't know what all that is. It's splattered all around it. But he said, now, where's this at? And I told him again. Well, he just turned around, walked off, and went over there. And you can see in one of those pictures, I mean, kind of the way it was, there's 5 or 6 gathered on the bridge, and they was telling this and telling that. And yeah, and you can see me and Johnny standing there. That picture you got. And
yeah, that picture that picture actually shows you, Dennis, and your friend.
That
Johnny.
shows me and Johnny there. And anyway, we sit there, and Mr. Jones was around there for a little while, and then he started walking back toward the car that was over there, and he come over there to us, and he said, now, where did you say that was? I said, it's about 2 miles down there before you get to that old black cemetery, that St. Rest cemetery. You can't miss it. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take off and ride on down there, and I'll just sit there. I'll just be there. And he said, okay. And they went on. Well, Johnny, he was going to walk back and get to his car, and it was a half a mile up the road. I just got on the motorcycle and headed that way. And when I got down there, I kind of pulled in at the road that goes into that old cemetery, which is a little bit farther than where it was. And I was sitting there, and The first person that got there was a highway patrolman. I don't know. He came from the opposite direction, and I didn't know who he was. But he pulled in, and I kept sitting there. And then in a minute, Jim Moffitt and this one and that one started pulling up, and then finally I saw Mr. Jones, him and Sloan. He was another TBI agent that was there. Them come up. And they just, all of them gathered together, and they walked over there and looked at the top of her head and all that. They was looking at the hole, and they never did walk back there where I was sitting. So I finally just cranked it up and left. And
all right.
Nobody ever said a word to me or questioned me about anything. And I told the TBI this since they've been investigating this. They said, well, why didn't you do this or do? I said, listen, I couldn't go tell Pusser. I couldn't go tell the TBI because I'd already told them everything I knew. I went to the FBI in Jackson, Tennessee, and went in and asked to talk to an agent. And they just the same as ignored me. And wouldn't even talk to me. And I just left and said to hell with it.
And that's where it stayed for years, probably.
Yeah, right. And that is where it stayed.
Really
I would tell everybody that it came up, I'd say, I won't go into exact words, I'd say, but he killed her just as sure as I'm standing here.
All right.
And another thing, I'm kind of.
No, go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, just real quick, Danny or Dennis, just real quick, just to let the listeners know, if you've tuned in just now, episode number 65, we're talking to Dennis Hathcock. He's the one speaking right now. He's basically a pretty crucial witness in reference to the murder of Pauline Pusser. He saw some stuff later on, and there's Pauline there. He actually arrived to the spot. He actually pointed out, to tell you the truth, he pointed out the likely spot where Pauline was murdered. And he told the police about it then on the day of August the 12th of 1967. We're also here with Mike Elam and Danny Cupples. And go ahead and finish your thought there on that, Dennis.
Well, I mean, about all, but I was going to say another thing that's to me is pretty important. And Mike, I think he knows that this. Diane, their stepdaughter, Pusser's stepdaughter, were the same age as me. Well, when I went to school at Jackson State, to college, she went to school up there, and I got to be kind of friends with her because that old car that she had wouldn't start half the time, and she rode home with me 2 or 3 times back to McNairy County, and she'd get down in the floor and hide and all that kind of stuff, afraid he'd see her in the car with me and all that. And she told her best friend that she saw him dragging her mother out to the car and setting her up in the car that night, and that her shoes fell off, and he picked them up and set them over there in the car. And
yeah, the picture that we're looking at here,
girl that he told
that picture at the
record all that. And
if just to point out to the viewers, that if you're looking there at that photo, that what he's talking about is at the front of that seat down there at the floorboard, there's a pair of shoes sitting right there. And Mike's going to talk about that a little bit more at length later.
Right, there, you can see them.
Right. That's interesting. So, Danny, jump in there. I know you were wanting to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say how I got involved, per se. A couple of years ago, I was looking around Facebook, and I saw this post about Pusser, and that caught my attention because I'm from that area, and it was Mike's Facebook page that he's got, and I just started commenting on it. It's talking about my grandmother that was murdered there, and that caught Mike's attention because this investigative mind that he is. He's thinking probably, hey, I need to talk to this guy. There may be some more that I can learn from the Pusser investigation. So we actually connected. That's been a couple of years ago, and we've been friends ever since. And I met Dennis through Mike, and Dennis and I connected and found out that we were like third cousins. And I've never met him before. It's all, been over there, and he and I have been friends ever since. And it's really made me dig into this story, and my interest from Mike's story. The other story is the story that I've been hearing my whole life from my dad, who was a law officer over there, and all my family. From my mother was a Hathcock. And anyway, that's how I've met these two guys, and we've been friends ever since. And the story it just blows my mind how everything, Jason, as an investigator, as a homicide detective or a police officer for as long as you have, when you start seeing the evidence start flowing, and you start following that evidence, and it keeps leading you more and more. And this is the way this Mike's story was. And I just got so tied up in it. And I'm so glad that he spent 20 plus years of his life into this case to pull out what now we know is the truth.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And actually, just to mention real quick, I didn't know anything other than what I saw in the movie. And I've known Danny for 15 plus years, probably 20, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And actually, it came up in conversation somehow because you told me where you were from. And I was like, wait a second, McNairy County. And you're like, yeah, actually, I rode in Sheriff Pusser's police car when I was a kid. My grandmother got murdered. And she was a Hathcock. Is that correct?
That's right. She was. And the reason I just found this out recently, I've heard different stories, but I heard this from a pretty good source, that the reason my sister, my mother, and I rode in his car, that he came to our house and picked us up so that my mother could identify her mother's body. And that's, of course, I was too young. I don't remember it, but, I just heard it my whole life.
Yeah. And when you told me that, then somehow I think we got on that conversation again. Either that or I'd happened to come across Mike's podcast and I asked you about it, and you're like, oh, yeah, you should check that out. Yeah. And I did, and I started watching it, and I was like, holy cow, I couldn't stop watching the darn thing. And so, Mike, take it from there. Basically, you're starting to talk to Dennis, and thank you, Dennis, for that account, because that's some powerful stuff. And that's why I didn't stop you at all, because that was incredible. And by the way, his story is right on the money every time he tells it. It doesn't change. And that says a lot to me. And so from there, Mike, you're getting involved in this story, and you start watching it. And by the way, like I said, I was shocked to see some of this crazy stuff that I'm watching here. I'm like, wait, what are they talking about? I believed everything. I didn't believe it all, but I was like, yeah, I thought that this was for the most part kind of true. And so they have this movie. And by the way, Dennis, real quick before I move on to Mike, how did your life change a little bit after the movie Walking Tall came out? And you're starting to see some of your relatives on there basically being vilified.
Well, truthfully, when you see people say, well, everybody named Hathcock ought to be killed, and most of them never have even seen Louise or ever talked to, much less knew her, and people make those kind of statements. I have literally prayed for the day that the TBI made that announcement. But.
And just to remind people, who were some of the people in that movie that, well, your dad is it your dad or is it your grandfather in the movie that's basically portrayed as one of the guys actually shooting him? shooting from
no.
his car.
My dad is who he first tried to blame it all on. Claim, and to me, if you read the statement that Buford Pusser gave that morning and later on in the hospital, there's no way that nobody with good common sense could believe that. Because he tells that it was a car just like my dad had, a blue Cadillac that came up behind him, and it at 5 o'clock in the morning, you couldn't a bit more tell what color it was than anything with the headlights off, especially. But he claimed that. And then, if I didn't know this till I got the copy of what his original statement was, here's Pauline with her brains blowed out, sitting in the seat with him. And instead of trying to go to the hospital, he decided he would drive down to my dad's house and see if the car was at the house. And it wasn't at the house, so he decided he'd go drive up to the Shamrock and drive around it to see if the car. And here's his wife that's just had her head blown half off. But he's worried about whether the car is at the house or not. I mean, anybody should see through that. But
yeah, we'll get to Mike here in a quick second. Hey, Amanda, throw up that video just to remind people of the press conference, and it shows a little clip from the movie.
Well, a major plot twist in the story of a corruption-fighting sheriff that inspired the Hollywood movie Walking Tall. Authorities in Tennessee now say Buford Pusser likely killed his own wife. In the film, the sheriff was depicted as tough on organized crime and led audiences to believe that his wife Pauline was murdered by his enemies and that he was wounded. The crime was never solved. But recently, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation began re-examining cold cases. Detectives found holes in Pusser's story, exhumed Pauline's body, and took a closer look at forensic evidence. The district attorney outlined some of the inconsistencies.
Blood spatter on the hood outside of the vehicle contradicts Buford Pusser's statements. Dr. Ravel opines that the gunshot wound to Buford Pusser's cheek was a close contact wound, not long range, as Buford Pusser described, and likely self-inflicted.
Pusser died in a car crash 7 years after his wife killing. The DA said if Pusser was alive, they would have presented the case to a grand jury for a murder indictment. Investigators also discovered evidence of prior domestic violence.
Mike, why don't we take it from there and you talk a little bit about, well, wherever you think it'd be a good spot to start with. But I was thinking about the part where Dennis kind of left off at that part at the house where something was going on at that house. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. I've interviewed several people, and I've been told that Buford, Carl, his father, was the jailer and dispatcher that night at the sheriff's office. And he, for some reason, called the county coroner and told him, you need to get to Buford's house. Pauline and Buford are in a fight and they're about to kill each other. Well, the coroner was Warden Moore, so he drove over to Adamsville, and when he got there, there was no one there. As far as Buford and Pauline, he looked around the house and he did notice that there was a couple of droplets of blood on the carpet. And when I asked him about it, it wasn't like it was blood spatter, but more like somebody had been hit, had a busted lip or a nose. And that was all he could find. So there wasn't anything he could do. So he left. And went back to Selmer. Now, then at the same time, I had contacted LaVon Plunk. Now, that's the deputy, Petey Plunk's wife. And I was asking her about that morning. And she said, well, actually, Pauline and I were best friends, which I already knew. And she told me that she had taken Pauline home. They had been out together because Pauline was leaving Buford. That was going to be the last time for a while that she and Levon would see each other. And she was waiting outside the house. She was afraid to go in when she took Pauline there. Said, you know, Pauline invited her in, and she just made the comment that, well, here, let me catch something here. There we go. Invited her in, but she said she was so afraid of Buford that she did not want to go in the house, and said, I'll just park a ways down and you flash your porch light on or something like that, give me a signal, and I'll drive up there and I'll pick you and the kids up and all your belongings. We can get them in the car and we can be gone. Pauline had been staying at some point at a motel in Savannah, which is not but a short distance from Adamsville. At any rate, well, you know, that's when she said she heard a gunshot come from the house, and she didn't know what to do. She couldn't call the sheriff's office because Carl Pusser would be the one to take the call. She couldn't call her husband because she knew that Petey and Buford were just as tight as they could be, and that if Buford was in some kind of trouble, that Petey would probably lie to help him get out of trouble, and therefore he could get in trouble himself. So she said, I left. I went home. I was trying to decide what to do, who to contact. She said, because Buford had half the law enforcement people fooled and the other half were afraid of him. And so while she's sitting there, she said Petey called home and said, well, Pauline just got killed in an ambush meant for Buford. And she told me that was, I knew that was a lie. But at any rate, then an associate of ours, Arnie Hardy, who was chief of police up in Continental Ohio, you know, when he spoke with Diane, and he'd gone down to the Pusser restaurant and said he ran into Diane there. Diane worked there for Duana, and he made the comment, I'm sorry about what happened to your mom, all this and that. And she said, well, who do you think killed my mom? And he said, well, I think it was Buford. And she thanked him and told him that was her thoughts. That then she said the reason why is that she heard the door, said she heard a pop. She described the gunshot as a pop, and said she heard the front door open, and she looked out the window and saw Buford, as Dennis described, half carrying, half dragging Pauline out to the car, put her in the front seat, came back, and she told Arnie that I thought he was coming back for me, and said he got about halfway to the house. He stooped down, picked up Pauline's shoes, and took them over to the car and placed them in the floorboard. And you know how you'll pick up a pair of shoes with one hand and set them down. That's exactly what they appear to have been like, for at least for me. And as opposed to the way that a woman kicks her shoes off whenever she's in the car going to take a leisurely ride. One thing I'm terribly interested in, I've never mentioned this before. I'd like to know if Pauline had her purse with her, because a woman never leaves and goes anywhere without her purse, it seems like, or at least my wife doesn't. I'm not sure what your guys' wives are like. But at any rate, Diane said that was the last time she saw her mom was when Buford drove off with her. And then one of those situations where they took a convoluted route to get down to the state line area. You know, Carl and Buford's story became that, well, there was a call that came in and that the sheriff's office about some kind of a disturbance. It originally started out as Buford would tell it, that it was at Hollis Jordan's beer joint, which is about a mile north of the state line on 45. And but for some reason, instead of driving 2 blocks and getting on Highway 64 and then going into Selmer and taking Highway 45, he took this, like I say, a convoluted combination of back roads to get down to New Hope Road and go to the state line. It was a little bit shorter than the route that he could have taken, but Buford had a habit of really driving fast. He was in several accidents, as a matter of fact. And but for some reason that night, apparently, I think it was to avoid going through any place that might be populated, since he had Pauline in the car in the state that she was. I believe that's the reason he took that route. And it's suspicious to me also because how would an ambush party know to wait for him on this back roads route to get down there? I do a couple of tours, Dennis and I do every year. And that's one of the things we like to do is drive the course that he took that morning. And because people can see, it makes no sense that he would have done that. At any rate, he, says that he arrives, passes the New Hope Methodist Church there on New Hope Road, and that he's driving about 50 miles an hour. Now, I might qualify that by saying just a day or so before is when they had overlaid New Hope Road with this layer of chert. And now you also have to keep in mind that Jim Moffitt and Warren Jones established the time of the ambush as being around 4:45. And as you know, it's pitch dark at 4:45 in the morning. But he said they must have pulled out behind him at the church, accelerated, chased him down, and caught up with him, and that they fired a couple of shots at the bridge, and that Pauline, according to his stories, that he would tell the media, that Pauline was hit in the head. She was only wounded, that she was gasping for breath, leaned over against him, that he claimed that her weight, he couldn't get to his firearm, but he would cross draw, so he wore his gun on the left side, which made no sense to me, that he couldn't get to his gun. And he said he just accelerated and he lost him. And he stopped down near Davis Yancey Road, the intersection that it has with New Hope, just shy of the intersection. And he's pulled over to check on Pauline. Now, I don't know why he would have thought that he would have lost him in just 2 miles. But at any rate, he said he started to get out of the car. He opened the door, had 1 foot on the ground, 1 foot still in the car, and they pulled up right beside him. And that the gun came out. He was hit by one of the first shots that was fired and hit him in the chin. Everybody believes that his jaw was blown off, and that's not true. He was just hit in the chin. It was a fairly serious wound when you see it, but nothing like that movie led everyone to believe. But he said he fell over into the floorboard, and that's what saved his life. And said he was unconscious for a little bit, that when he finally came to, raised up, he realized, he grabbed the steering wheel, pulled himself back up behind the seat. He realized Pauline had been hit a second time, he said, and that the car, when he turned and looked out the window, the car was still sitting right there beside him. They'd even turned their engine off, according to him. And he said that he lunged at the car, started to and grabbed the barrel of the carbine, and said the shooter was trying to bolt an ejected shell that would not eject, that the gun was jammed, and he was trying to pull it out of the guy's hands. And finally, they started the car and drove off and pulled the gun out of his hand, which made no sense to me, that a guy who's been an ex-wrestler that's as big as he is now, if the shooter is holding the carbine in his left hand and trying to work that bolt with his right hand, Buford should have pretty easily gotten that out of that one hand. Didn't happen. But in the meantime, the other thing I found suspicious is that Buford was able to describe the shirt as a plaid shirt, went down to about the guy's elbows, could describe his complexion, color of his hair, said he'd never seen the person before. And like Dennis said, even described a car that would have appeared to be W.O.'s. W.O., he had a particular interest in Cadillacs, and he refurbished them. And it's my understanding he had sold this one about 2 weeks prior to a dealer, I believe it was, down in Tupelo. And so he didn't even have the car any longer. So I don't know if Buford just assumed, well, I'll throw the Cadillac in there and make it a good story to lead them back to W.O. But when they checked it out, found out it shouldn't have been W.O.'s car at all at that time. At any rate, he said that whenever they drove off, he started his engine, and according to the report, says that he drove all over creation, down, looping around all these roads, trying to find the ambush party. And like Dennis said, Pauline's laying dead there beside him, and he's bleeding. And but still yet, he's trying to find him. Well, I don't know what he did during all this time, but they heard a radio call somewhere around 6:10, and Hugh Kirkpatrick, the chief of police in Selmer, heard the radio call and knew it was Buford, and knew it sounded like he had been injured. So he went looking for him and found him at McCoy's store there in Adamsville, about 8 miles from the ambush scenes. And he'd pulled over and stopped there. And again, he wasn't supposed to have gotten out of the car, but you notice all the blood on the hood of that car. I think you showed a photo of it a moment ago, and where I've circled all these blood droplets. And as you guys know, I don't know if your audience does, whenever spatter hits a flat surface, it will tail. And that tail, it's kind of in a way, like a teardrop, and it points to the direction the projectile was headed. And the red ones are some of the larger spots of blood. The green circle is where Cheryl McCullum, when she looked at the photograph, she says, well, what about the hole in the hood? That looks like a bullet hole. And I'd never noticed it before. I just assumed that was.
Let me stop you right quick, because I want to make a mention of that. Is that, Mike? First of all, I myself and Danny and Cheryl I know that all three of us are incredibly honored that you had actually reached out to the three of us, and each one of us separately has given our opinions based on a lot of the photographic evidence, and I'm sure you've probably talked to other people as well. And sure. I know that all three of us, and Danny, please elaborate further, but I know that all three of us were pretty consistent with one thing, and that was that if they were both in the car during this event, that blood could not have gotten onto the hood of that car. It's just not possible through that bullet hole that you can see on the right side of the you can see that bullet hole on that windshield, and it's just not possible. You can't do it. And I do applaud Cheryl for seeing that bullet hole that's in that green circle. And Danny, talk a little bit about what we're talking about here.
Right. I just like Mike said, blood spatter, the direction, the tail tells what direction the blood come from. And that's written all over the hood of that car. And it doesn't go with any of the story of what Buford said. One thing, when they announced what happened to Pauline, that's one thing that I disagree with a little bit, but hey, it's over with anyway. I think she was shot in the car in my opinion, especially after reading the autopsy report yesterday. But all those blood, and there's also blood not only on the hood of the car. If you look around the passenger side of the car, you'll see a blood droplet that was dropped at a 90-degree angle as someone would be standing there, and it would like drip off of them. I think it wasn't in the back passenger side door. So all this blood on the outside tells us as investigators, you can elaborate to Jason, that it doesn't go with what the story said.
No, but the one thing that's interesting to me too, I would like to know, and I hate to armchair quarterback an investigation that took place in the 60s, because if you look at some of these crime scene photos, ladies and gentlemen, and feel free to Google, you can find a lot of stuff online currently, but you'll notice even some of the pictures where there's investigators that are climbing out of that car without gloves on. So individuals there was one of them that showed a photo of like it showed Buford's handprint on the side of the car. Well, I mean, you can explain that. This is a police car. He's probably been in and out of that thing. However, if there's print over that blood, then that tells part of the story. If there was blood and then there's the ridges of a print over that blood, it's going to show that took place after the event of that blood spatter. But what did exist on this deal that I think is fascinating, and I'm really hoping that the TBI had something to work with here, is back in the day in 1967, they could only tell blood type. And so with that said, both Buford and Pauline had different blood types. And it just depends upon I don't know if they had a habit of swabbing blood back then, but whatever they did, I would hope that they collected some of this stuff. But then again, when you think about it, they didn't even do an autopsy on Pauline at the time, which is absolutely insane to me that did not take place.
Yeah, I believe that Buford probably just bullied his way into there not being an autopsy report. When you saw the photograph of the gentleman looking down on the hood, that's Will Terry Abernathy. He was the district attorney general at the time. And I would think that he would have known what he was looking at, and why that when I interviewed Dr. Jerry Francisco, who would have been one of the people involved in Pauline's autopsy, had there been one performed in 1967. I don't know. It's just one of those things where he said that at the time that the district attorney general and the local medical examiner had to concur on the need for an autopsy. And they said in Pauline's murder, said either one or both apparently didn't want an autopsy performed. So one was never done. And I've heard people say that, well, half the people that were in law enforcement and such were afraid of Buford. And that's the reason I say he may have just bullied his way into saying there's not going to be an autopsy report and we're going to get her buried. And
I'll add one other thing too, just real quick. Being a cop, and thank God we haven't dealt with this here in Tulsa, that not in my career, but being a cop, if a cop's wife was murdered, we're not stopping.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And I don't care what agency you're with. We're looking to find this individual at all cost, and I just don't see that effort on Buford's side following this incident. And that right there in and of itself is telling as well.
Right. So, Amanda, can Amanda pull up that picture of Buford Pusser holding the gun up standing beside the car? I want to make a point about that. You see that chin? That was just a little over a year after he was shot in that ambush. I mean, to me, if it was like his whole jaw blown off and laying on his chest, they had some really good plastic surgeons back then. But and I've studied a lot of pictures that were later after the ambush, and to me, by looking at that, it does not. Again, it does not look like a high-powered rifle or a rifle was shot toward him and hit him at a direct shot into his jaw. It looks to me like it was shot from that, like he stuck the gun in his mouth and shot out. That's just my opinion from what I see.
Yeah, and I think to a lot of people, if you're sitting there going, well, wait a second, how could he possibly do that? Well, when you're looking at the rest of your life in prison, you would be amazed at what people can do, especially if you're a cop. So I'm not really that surprised by that, really. And you know, if you think about it, did it get any of his teeth, Mike?
No.
No.
Oh, no. That's the part that amazed me is that as far as I know, it did not damage anything other than his chin. Like I say, in the movie, they indicated that his jaw was blown away, and you will have people that will argue to this day that half his face was shot off, and that didn't happen. He the wound basically went down through here. His lip is a little mangled, and you can see where the skin has appeared to me to have been torn. I don't know what your opinions are, but in the press conference, they did comment that it was a close contact shot, and they believed it to be self-inflicted.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that tells me that they must have some photographs.
Not the first time he'd ever been shot, because what I found so suspicious about this as well, you know, the legend has it that he was shot 8 times, stabbed 7 times, and for instance, on January 2nd of 1967, he was said he was stopping a vehicle. That when he walked up, he was shot 4 times. It grazed, one shot grazed his left arm. One shot grazed his abdomen. And then he claimed he had 2 shots that were to his cheek. And in none of these cases were any of the wounds serious. I mean, you would think, how does somebody get shot here without it causing damage to the tongue, teeth, gums, upper palate? But it was like the shot went in his mouth and came out. And he said that was twice that he was shot in the same spot. That was very suspicious. And
Hey,
of all the, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, do you mind if I tell Arnie's story as he told me?
Go ahead. That's fine.
Can you introduce him one more time before I do it? As far as who he is.
Arnie is now working for a drug task force, but he retired as chief of police in Continental Ohio. So here's a guy that's been around, got lots of experience. But
Okay.
You go ahead with the. I might also add that Arnie and I met many years ago down there during the weekend that they hold the Pusser Festival, and you know how it is. You guys know this. Law enforcement types like to hang out with birds of a feather to some degree. So we kind of met and made a bond, and that's how I got to know Arnie. Now,
Arnie,
go ahead with your story.
Okay. First, I'll try to make this quick, Jason. I promise. Arnie and I met at this last gathering that we had earlier this year. And but you remember how the story goes, hey, as Mike just told it about the ambush and Dennis. I was told something that happened in the middle of all that. You know, they got a call to Hollis Jordan's, or is it Old Hickory Club, Mike?
Hollis Jordan's place. It's Jordan's place.
And it was a disturbance call, and that's when Pauline was going to go with him down there, and that's why she was in the car. And you've heard everything that Mike said and Dennis. Here's a story that Arnie told me yesterday. And this has been known in the TBI, and everybody knows it. Mike's has passed this along as well, but I like to tell it as he told me. He said that when he was down, when he talked to Diane, when he came down years ago to the restaurant, he said he's got this face that everybody just wants to walk up and talk to him for some reason. It's just this is the way it is. And he said he was down there, and this guy walks up to him, and he knew he was there about Buford Pusser. Just it's just curiosity. I wanted to learn more about Buford Pusser, and so this man walks up and asked Arnie if he could tell him a story. And he said, "Yeah, go ahead." He said, it's a story that happened the night of the ambush." He said, "Sometime," and I don't know, I'm not good at it. I can't say it perfect. All I can say, it was near closing time for this bar that Buford was supposed to be going to the disturbance call to. And he said he was there at that bar that night. Buford did show up. He showed up. And then when he walked in, he had a rag on his face, like with blood on it. And then the owner of the bar ran everybody out, even him. He said they ran out. And when he went outside, he noticed in Buford's car was Pauline laying, looks like asleep, against the passenger side door. And he said he didn't know, what happened after that. So this was in the middle of all that. And that just like even more makes you think this was staged. He probably went there to get help, I'm assuming. In the time, I don't know the time. I'm sure bars, I know back then, Mike, didn't bars close around midnight, but sometimes Buford would let them stay open.
Depends on if you were paying Buford or not.
Yeah, exactly. So that was just like, Arnie told me that yesterday, and I was like, wow. And then I'm sure this part of the investigation that TBI looked at as well.
Yeah, I guess the only reason that I haven't said a lot about that story, I've mentioned it, but I like to try and verify through a second source most of the stuff that I tell. And a lot of times I'll mention one of these stories hoping that there's going to be somebody else that comes up and says, well, I saw exactly the same thing. But in this case, I haven't had that happen. So that's the only reason that I don't repeat it a lot, because like I say, I have up here, truth has no agenda. And so you like to get everything as out there as correctly as you can.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting story, and it's certainly worth looking at.
No, it is. And I want to thank I want to thank everybody for tuning in here, and this is so riveting. And so let's transition a little bit to this case. Of course, the evidence I think is really, really something, and the work that you did on this, Mike. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't considered getting this book, guess what? Mike actually sold out of these because of this information that came out on this. He had to call the publisher, and he said, "Hey, they had to start up the printing presses again to make many more." And so that tells you something. And the one thing I'm kind of curious about, and I do want to talk about Louise Hathcock before we leave tonight, because I think that's another really interesting piece to this puzzle. And there's Louise, who actually who is that to you, Dennis?
That would be my aunt.
Okay, so we'll talk a little. I want to get to that here in a second. After this thing had happened in McNairy County, and this announcement was made, Mike. Well, Dennis, you live there. Dennis, what has happened with the museum, the water tower, the signs, and everything right after this announcement was made?
Well, even prior to this announcement, they used to have something about home of Buford Pusser or something on the patrol car. On the city cars. I think they took that off. On the water tank there, the mayor, before they even made this announcement, was talking about that should it come back and implement Pusser, that they would have to make some changes. And I think they were talking about repainting the water tower. But apparently now they've decided they're going to keep the museum open until the TBI releases all of the files.
It's not that one, Amanda.
And I know why that is. They're going to try to nitpick everything in the file and say, well, it don't really say that he killed her. I know what they're going to do, That's about all. I mean,
Well,
nobody
so
pays much attention to that museum over there anymore. That's,
So they've taken,
you go.
yeah, it's that, there's the museum there. So I think they closed it like right away.
oh yeah.
And the whole point to what I'm getting at here is that there really hasn't been much of a backlash in reference to the announcement, which I kind of anticipated a little bit more. Now, Mike, tell me, I noticed on your last episode, I think it was, I may be wrong on the number, but it was your very last episode that you put out. And by the way, remind everybody where they can find your podcast.
Okay.
What's the name of your podcast?
You can go to either Mike Elam, it's on YouTube, or Buford Pusser, The Other Story. And I'm working on my 133rd episode right now that I should have out in the morning at 10 a.m. But that's where you can see. I've got on my Facebook page, I also call it Buford Pusser, The Other Story. And I've got a lot of these photos, documents, just a ton of information out there that you can get on the page and go to the photo section and just see a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where the very next morning, like we were saying, the press conference was at 11 o'clock on Friday. And the very next morning, I went straight out to the ambush sites at 10:30. The signs were already gone. They've been reported as stolen. I guess maybe some scavengers have thought, well, those are going to be keepsakes or will sell on eBay or something. But at any rate, now they're trying to let the public know, if you're the ones that took them, if we find you, we're going to prosecute. The museum, though, I went there straight after the ambush sites, and of course it was closed. There's a interesting clip that you can find on YouTube from the TV station WKRN, where that one of the reporters left the conference, went straight to Adamsville, and he was wanting to get their take on what the press conference had just revealed. And they asked him to leave, and they immediately closed the museum down for the day. While I was there Saturday afternoon, shortly afternoon, there were all kinds of people coming up there and asking me. I had on the shirt that I normally wear when I do a podcast, it has the logo and it says Buford Pusser, The Other Story. And people thought that I was with the museum and they were wanting to know why it was closed. And I said, well, I'm not with the museum. I really can't tell you. And they were asking me when it would be open again. I said, I don't know when it will be, if it ever will be. I'm not with the museum, but I was impressed by the number of people that after this announcement came out wanted to come and look at the museum, for themselves. And I've had a call in since Tuesday morning to Mayor Ham, and I just wanted to say, I hope the museum never closes, but what I would like to see is Pauline's name incorporated into the title of the museum. And I would like for you guys to take a part of the museum itself, take some of the more compelling information that shows that Buford probably did do this to Pauline, so people can see why that is everyone's thoughts on this that has seen any type of evidence. And tell it as a Wyatt Earp story, that he was a sheriff that would do his job. If you had problems, he would come out and help you. But he also walked on the other side of the law, and he took payoffs. He was a big womanizer. Just like I believe that he actually murdered Louise Hathcock. And when you see her autopsy report, and that was another thing that was very suspicious to me, is that she was basically somebody who operated the Razzle game on the Mississippi side where he had no authority, but she did sell bootleg whiskey. And I mean, when I say bootleg, I'm not talking about moonshine. I'm talking about where that they would go to some place like Caruthersville, Missouri, purchase it there, bring it down to the state line, and usually sell it like either pints or half pints. But you can see on that autopsy report right there where that she was shot in the back twice. First time was up near the shoulder. Buford would describe it as being the first shot he took, and he said it nipped her in the shoulder. And then he would talk about the second one being to her torso. And of course, you see the entry wound on this side, on the right side, on both of those. And then he said that she fell to the floor. And I might mention that she was probably turning, trying to get out of the room, because the bullet entered under her left shoulder blade there, but it exited out in that left photograph under her right breast. So it transitioned all the way across her body, damaging a lot of organs. But Buford would say, well, when she hit the floor, she was still trying to raise her gun to shoot me. And so he said he fired one last shot, which hit her in the head. And on the right side, you see up here on the back of the head where the exit wound was. So the only shot that he took from the front was one from the third shot when she was laying on the floor. And everyone that I've talked to that were spoken with that were there that morning said that there were fragments of her teeth embedded in the carpet, which tells you that she was right there on the carpet. So,
and that took place, by the way, in this motel, the Shamrock, which was right. Is that right?
It did. Louise kept room number 1 as a personal living quarter. So whenever she was at the motel, she'd stay in room number 1, and they would sell the bootleg alcohol out the back of the motel office here. Had a couple of employees that would car would pull up. They'd be the ones to go out, deliver the product and collect the money. But
so when you watch the movie, when you tell the story about how they supposedly ended up there anyway, because this is depicted in the movie, isn't it? But she's literally sitting at the front of the bar waiting to ambush Buford as he gets there. So how did the call end up to where supposedly Buford ends up over there?
Well, there was a couple, George and Dorothy Bogle, that lived in Illinois, and they were said to be returning from a vacation to the Gulf Coast. And 45 at that time was a major route from the Gulf area up to the Chicago area. And they had some really inclement winter weather. It was 1st of February, and so they wanted a place to stay. So they ironically stayed at the Shamrock. Now, why they didn't find some place in Corinth, which was only 4 or 5 miles away, I don't know. But they go all the way out here and stay at the Shamrock. And incidentally, they didn't live too far from where Buford's brother, John, had a club up there, the Chaparral, I believe it was the name of it. So I've never been able to establish whether they actually knew John Pusser. Possibility, I'd like to know. But at any rate, while that they were staying there, they said that they felt like they ate at the restaurant, which is on the Mississippi side of the line. And, you know, if we get to see that picture of it again, you'll see that there is a driveway that goes between the motel and the restaurant. They're just feet apart, but that's where the state line went down. At any rate, they determined that the crime happened in Tennessee, of course, because the body was over there. So
Amanda,
James
show that
Dickey
picture
came out.
Throw that picture of that motel up right quick. That one where you were showing. There you go. So explain that again.
Yeah, just to the where the motel office is, just to the left of it, just a few feet over is where the state line is.
Okay.
So, of course, that made it Buford's jurisdiction to go down, and because the Vogels were saying that Dorothy's purse was stolen, and they went to report it to Louise, said she was drunk, which the autopsy report indicates that her blood alcohol concentration was 0.23.
Which is
said
drunk.
that, well, yeah, very much so. See if I can get my camera back up here.
Hey, Dennis, do you remember that when that happened?
Yes, I do.
What was Louise like?
Well, she used to come take me home with her, me and Susan. That's the daughter that they adopted, her and Jack. And we'd go to Memphis some, and she'd take us over there to Liberty Land, it had another name then. Later on, it was Liberty Land. She was a very kind. She was a very kind person and tried to help anybody that needed help, but you didn't cross her. She ran that nightclub. And if you've ever been around any nightclubs where you've got drinking and men and women, you have a lot of problems. And she would stand up to men and tell them, "No, you get out of the club," or whatever. And she got a lot worse name. And of course, Buford wanted you to think. Petey Plunk said she was the meanest woman that ever lived in America, and all that. They raised 3 kids, sent them to college, took them and adopted them when nobody else would take them. And I could ask for nobody to have ever been any nicer or better to me than she was. And, I'm not saying that they're at the end. She had some, she was always, they want to credit her with killing Jack.
Mm-hmm.
That's
well, at this point,
that's not true.
You think that based on this information with respect to Pauline's case, and we got to get off here pretty quick, but do you think that based on this information in reference to Pauline's, the update on that, have you got any indication that they're possibly looking into this case again?
I have no idea. They have a petition out. Somebody put a petition out for them to.
Yeah, and I saw somebody else on one of the other deals. Go ahead.
I found one statement that District Attorney General Mark Davidson made as I was leaving the press conference. I stopped and spoke with him for a little bit, just wanted him to know how much I really appreciated all of his efforts and apologized for being a pain in the backside over all this, trying to push to get all of it done. And he made the comment, "It's not over." So,
okay, good.
I don't know what that means. Are they going to go back and look for accomplices that may have helped Buford cover it up? Are they going to look at Louise Hathcock's death, at Russ Hamilton's death? Those are 2 people that Buford killed. And, the important thing to keep in mind here is every county around McNairy County had the same kind of problems. Mm-hmm. Nobody else was being threatened the way that Buford claimed to be. I think he was all along building a legend for himself.
Well, he's also is a serial killer. It takes 3 people, I believe I was told, to be classified as a serial killer. Well, we know of 3 that he killed. And, he's credited with being at Towhead, being there to kill Towhead too.
Yes.
And you just have to be there and have lived there to understand, if you fell for the Pusser myth, there's still a lot of people that believe it. But if you really knew what was going on, the true story is much more intriguing.
Absolutely.
Oh,
No, I agree with that, and I think that's I completely agree. There's a picture of his podcast. That's Mike Elam's podcast right there. I encourage you to check that out. There's several of you that I saw in this room here today. I don't know if it's Lieutenant Voss or LT Voss, Ronnie Woods, Stephen Cryer, is it Stephen Crayer, Cliff Haskett, Kathy L. You know, I've seen you in here for the first time tonight, and I really expect to see you subscribing to this page. I hadn't seen your names before. I'd like to see them if you're not already, and I appreciate it. Mike, you're hopefully there was a couple of people I want to make mention of this real quick, because I think this is important. There was a couple of people that I saw that are like, what's the point? Everybody's already dead. Well, the point is we need to know the truth. The truth is important.
Justice for Pauline.
Well, just for
Justice for Pauline is what it's all about. It's not about Dennis. It's not about me. It's about a woman that paid the ultimate price so that Buford could have a little bit of fortune and then fame.
well,
And
her
like I say, I think
her brother is 80-something years old and not in good health. And her sister, she died, what, about a month ago. And they've waited all this time. And if you heard her brother, he said that he was not shocked at all to learn that Pusser killed her. So they've been waiting a long time to hear this.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
Unfortunately, her sister didn't get to hear it. But
Well, no, but it's a little vindication for your family name as
that's
well.
right.
Actually,
That's true. But
that's right. And you can hold your head high. And Mike, I'm telling you, buddy, I've got mad respect. I think that's good that there's people like you out there that took the time to look into this. And I know that, like you said, you're part of this story from here on. And I'm proud to know you. I'm proud that you reached out to myself. I know Danny feels the same way. I had invited Cheryl on, but Cheryl's having fun kicking it at CrimeCon.
yeah.
So she would have been here tonight. And I'm sorry, Kathy L.
Stay busy.
Okay, you've been here every week. She stays busy. You're right. I didn't know that, but thank you for correcting me on that. I appreciate it. But for the others, you better start subscribing. All right, at least I'd appreciate it. All right. Well, listen, if there's anything else that we need to cover here, listen, we could go on. We could go on for 2 more hours, easy. And I will spare Mike, because Mike probably, if Mike doesn't give it a rest, Mike's been inundated.
Can I
with
say one
calls.
more thing before I go?
Yeah, please.
When you watch the movie Walking Tall, I found it ironic that for this to be such a legendary story, that they had to change the name of everyone in the movie. Just about Dennis's aunt, for instance, they called her Callie Hacker. Her dad, or pardon me, his dad, W.O. Hathcock, was called Buell Jaggers. They couldn't even use the real names, and I think that was because they were afraid of all of the outrage that could come from naming these people by their real names. And there was no state line mob as people saw it in the movie Walking Tall. During Sheriff Pusser's reign as sheriff, there were 2 people that were involved in this alleged state line mob, and that was Louise Hathcock and Towhead White. But yet in that scene where they're all meeting, trying to decide what to do, and Callie Hacker is talking about, well, John Witter said this or John Witter said that, and we just need to do what he says. There would have only been 2 people in that meeting.
Yeah.
That's how phony the movie was. So, folks, if you're watching it and you're believing it, you've got a rude awakening coming.
Yeah, well said. Well said, Mike. And you're in the process of writing a second book that's going to be more in depth about. Are you going to be? Is this like after the ambush, or what is the book? The second book. Thanks for coming back, Dennis.
I'm writing one about the ambush itself, and going to reveal a lot of things that I learned, how I came about going through this story and connecting all the dots and who all the dots were. and what various people told me, and just the way that I finally got down to this, and we managed to contact the TBI and finally get them to take another look at the Pusser legend, and find that it doesn't hold any truth to it, really.
Yeah. Man, I'll tell you what, I really, hey, is there any money left in the estate of Buford Pusser? And if so, I mean, I think that this would open it up to the potential of some civil stuff from Pauline's family.
I think they went through everything that was there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't know that whenever Buford was killed in that car accident where he was driving while intoxicated, his blood alcohol concentration at the time of the wreck was 0.18, and the trooper that worked the accident said he had to take that out of the report just to get his superiors to accept it. But at any rate, he left everything to his mother, about half of it to his mother and about half of it to Dewana. And Helen was so interested, his mother was so interested in trying to figure out who murdered Buford, that she was the trustee to Dewana's account. And she spent almost every bit of that money of Dewana's on this investigation. Why she didn't spend her own, I don't know. But, and I understand that the insurance company went ahead and paid Dewana's out again. And I guess that Dewana, just in a short time in the lifestyle that she lived, blew through all that money early. So there's not much left. The state and Adamsville, I guess, actually own the Pusser Home and Museum. It's not even in the family now.
All right.
And I might also add that Diane and Mike, Pauline's children by a previous marriage, didn't get anything.
No, nothing.
Yeah. Interesting. It's an interesting story, literally. Ladies and gentlemen, check out his podcast. He has constant updates. I know that Dennis has been on several of his episodes. I know that he's been inundated for requests. So thank you to the both of you for joining us tonight. Danny and I aren't near on demand as you two are right now. You guys are big time as far as being sources of information in reference to this case. And Dennis, you're really an instrumental witness in this particular saga. And I just appreciate your candidness in this whole deal. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing to come on. If you're ever rolling through Oklahoma in that tour bus and you've got I don't care who it is. If you got anybody on there and you're rolling through and you need a hand, you give me a call. And I'll come down there and I'll help you, Dennis. And
yeah.
He's like,
one more thing.
Yeah.
Dennis finally got to give his statement to the TBI.
Yeah.
That's
good.
Took a lot of years, but he finally got to give his statement to the TBI about everything that he saw.
Good.
Well, I'll finally say, I'll tell you what, Dennis, that's got to feel good. And did you feel like they were really listening to you?
The TBI, well, you could, they're the greatest. They're great. I mean, I did a lot. I worked with them quite a bit. I had to go down there several times and show them this and show them that. And I did a little. When you see the files, you'll see it.
No, I'm looking forward to it. I really am. Hopefully those are going to be out in the near future.
Very
Anything
much
else?
so. Very, very near.
Danny?
Read that
Believe
autopsy
that for me.
report too, Jason. If you hadn't read it yet, take a look at it. It's very interesting.
I have not. Where do we find that right now? If we can find that.
I'll get you a copy. It's you have to request a copy. If you can get one if you live in the state of Tennessee, but I don't think anyone from outside the state's allowed to request one from the forensic center. But you can. They're out there everywhere. I've seen them on on TikTok.
Yeah, I've got a copy, and Danny's got a copy. We'll get you one. One
Yeah,
of us.
All right. I appreciate it. I'd love to read it. And I'm sure that you'll probably add that in your second book, which would be really amazing. Ladies
Oh,
and gentlemen,
absolutely.
these guys have been great. I don't want to keep them anymore. Thank your wives for letting you be here. Tell Connie we said hello, Mike. And,
We'll do it.
and to, and my wife's probably steaming back there, just ready for me to get off this thing. Listen,
Tell her
hey,
we
join
said
me.
Hello, and tell
I
her we
will.
said hello, and we look forward to seeing you in November.
November or October? Hopefully it's in November because my schedule in
October.
November. Well, until then, ladies and gentlemen, if you get a chance, you can. I just want to make mention of this again. If you're looking at maybe joining us, who knows? Mike might return again for a second time. But I'll be speaking at the U.S. Marshal Museum November the 21st. That's November the 21st at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. It doesn't cost much. It's a very, very small amount to get in. I think it's $10. It's for a good cause. The proceeds go to the U.S. Marshal Museum there in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And I'd love to see you there. Thank you all very much. Remember to go to my Detective Jason White YouTube page. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter. I've got a Detective Jason White Facebook page. And remember, I make nothing on any of those, but I do interact with you, and I enjoy that. Next week, episode number 66 is going to be Tyler Burns, who's going to talk about, I think it's called Signal 86, and Danny's been on his podcast.
Yeah.
He's going to talk about some mental health with first responders. And then after that, I've got two more epic guests that are going to be coming on. So we've got just some dynamite guests that are coming on. I appreciate everybody for bearing with us. Thank you, Amanda, for hanging out too. And Amanda doesn't make much, if anything. I don't think she makes anything either. She just loves being a part of this. And so we appreciate everybody for joining us this evening on a Friday evening. Thank you all. Remember, buy the book. Thank you, Dennis. It was great to really sit down and listen to your story in person. And
Thank you.
I'm a fan of yours,
very
buddy.
much.
You're a friend from here on. So
You
we'll be
are
in
too.
touch. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again, Danny, Mike, everybody. Thank you to the viewers. Take us out, Amanda.